Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into a really profound ancient text to get to the bottom of what's really holding us back on our spiritual path. And I'll give you a little hint. It's probably not what you think. Think about it for a second. When you sit down to meditate or just try to make some real progress in your life, what's the actual thing that gets in your way? Is it some force out there in the world? Or is it something a whole lot closer to home? So our guide for this whole discussion comes from a text called the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra. Now, you can think of this less like a religious scripture and more like an incredibly deep, incredibly practical user's manual for the human mind. It's for anyone who's serious about this stuff. Here's what we've got on deck for today. First, we're going to redefine what these obstacles, these inner demons, really are. Then, we'll get into the 4 core patterns of obstruction, the 4 maras. After that, we'll look at how they pop up in our everyday lives. And of course, we'll cover the strategy to deal with them. And finally, we'll talk about why this is all so important for our own inner freedom. You know, the ancient text uses this word Mara, which usually gets translated as demon or some kind of evil one. But let's be really clear. From a practitioner's point of view, we are not talking about some monster hiding under the bed. We're talking about fundamental obstacles that are just baked into the human experience. And here's what's so brilliant about this text. It takes all the messiness and chaos of our inner world and neatly organizes it. It says, look, all those roadblocks you keep hitting, they basically fall into one of 4 categories. Just understanding this framework is honestly half the battle.
All right, so what are these 4 fundamental obstacles? Let's break them down, one by one.
Okay, the first one is called Skandha Mara, and you might want to buckle up for this because it's a real mind bender. This isn't an enemy that comes and attacks you, it is you. It's your body, your feelings, your thoughts, your perceptions, the very building blocks of who you think you are. And why is that a Mara? Well, because this entire mind-body system is the very stage where all suffering, sickness, old age, and death play out. The second one is Klesha Mara. So if your mind and body are the stage, the Kleshas, well, they're the wild, chaotic actors on that stage. These are all the difficult emotions we know so well: greed, anger, jealousy, pride, and just plain old confusion. They are the active energies that wreck our peace and keep us spinning in circles. Third, we've got Mrityu Mara, the Mara of death. This one's pretty straightforward, but incredibly profound. It's the simple, unavoidable fact that this life will end. For any serious practitioner, death is the ultimate deadline, the final obstacle that cuts short our precious opportunity to wake up. And finally, we have the trickiest one of all, Devaputra Mara. Now, forget any ideas about a literal god in the sky. The text is talking about an internal saboteur. It's that subtle temptation that shows up precisely when you're making progress. It's the sudden urge to check your phone, the attachment to a really pleasant meditation experience, or that little bit of pride you feel about how spiritual you're becoming. It's the part of you that whispers, hey, why don't you just relax? You've done enough. Okay, so that's the theory. But how did these big, abstract ideas actually show up in our real day-to-day lives? How do they get in our way? You know, how can we spot these patterns when they're actually happening? The text calls these Mara's activities, and you're about to see they're probably going to sound very, very familiar. The text gives some classic examples, like suddenly losing all your motivation because you get hooked on some new desire, or just indulging way too much in sensory stuff, food, entertainment, you name it. Then there's the big one, procrastination and laziness. But it's also the subtler things, right? Like when you start to doubt the whole path, or you feel a little fear and you just shrink back. Or maybe you get distracted by chasing success and approval from others. Does any of that sound familiar? Yeah, I thought so. That's Mara at work. So it's one thing to be able to spot these interferences, but what do we actually do about them? Well, the text doesn't just leave us with the problem. It gives us a clear, powerful solution, a kind of mental toolkit. The main antidote it prescribes is called the 4 right efforts. And this isn't about waging some violent inner war or suppressing our thoughts. It's actually a really skillful, proactive strategy for managing our own minds. Just look at how simple and beautiful this is. First, you practice prevention. You see a negative thought coming and you just don't let it land. Second, if it's already there, you actively let it go. You abandon it. Third, you don't just stop there. You proactively generate goodness. You arouse kindness, focus, and wisdom. And fourth, once that goodness is there, you protect it. You help it grow stronger. It's a complete system for mental and spiritual hygiene. Okay, so we've got the diagnosis, we've got the prescription. But what is the big picture here? Why is mastering this inner game so incredibly important?
I absolutely love this metaphor from the text. It says that when we practice like this, we develop something called bases of power. It's like we're growing our own spiritual feet. And with those feet, you're no longer stuck. You're no longer paralyzed by your inner states. You can come and go freely. You can leap over obstacles. And you can bravely walk the path to real liberation.
And that's really the heart of it all, isn't it? The point of all this work isn't to become some uptight person who is constantly suppressing themselves. It's the total opposite. It's about cultivating an inner strength that's so stable and a sense of freedom that's so vast that the inevitable storms of life, the maras, just don't have the power to knock you over anymore.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought to take with you. Based on everything we've just talked about, if you were to take a really honest look inside right now, which of these patterns, is it distraction, desire, fear, doubt, which one is most active for you in this moment? Because just seeing it clearly, well, that's the first and most powerful step you can take.